What's up, Daily Fab Gamers? I recently made a joke that Ian Holland should be banned so that I would receive his casting gigs, and while I was mostly kidding, I'm serious when I say that shoutcasting fab events is something I'd love to do. However, public speaking is hard, and casting isn't something I have experience with. I can do analysis well enough, but entertaining and informing an audience while deftly navigating my words is a different beast entirely, and so, why not add some variety to the channel while also practicing the craft? I'll be casting recently uploaded events from the comfort of my home, and I'm asking for your feedback. Let me know what I did right or wrong and how you think I can improve, keeping in mind that things I'll be focusing on are not tripping over my words, pepping up my speech so that I don't put you all to sleep, and adequately and accurately reflecting the game state while also giving some on-the-spot analysis. You can find a YouTube link to the professionally cast game in the video description below. You'll also find a link to my Patreon page where subscribers get access to my matchup guides for all my tournament decks and weekly bonus content, including draft reviews and deck techs. Want to tighten and optimize your gameplay in real life? Use the affiliate link in the video description below to buy your very own Codex journal, and be sure to use code LUPINE10, that's LUPINE10, at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Finally, Daily Fab Gameplay is brought to you in part by Hemel from The Bazaar. It's never been more affordable to play in flesh and blood. Players have been buying the cards they need from Hemel for years. I started buying from him in 2023 and have never found a better deal. The Bazaar's prices are the lowest for singles, full sets, and class sets, including new releases. High Seas singles and more are available now and ship both domestically and internationally. Message Hemel on Blue Sky, Discord, email, or Twitter to see what he can do for you. Now, let's get right into it. Welcome to the Poland National Championship 2025 Day 1. Here we have, in Round 7, Cindra, Drakai of Retribution playing against Gravy, Bones, Shipwrecked Looter. As in previous videos, I will be referring to the players by the names of their heroes in order to avoid any embarrassment with mispronunciation of names or incorrect pronouns. So we have Cindra versus Gravy. Gravy here going first in this game. As far as loadout is concerned, we see standard loadout choices from both heroes. Gravy on Crown of Dominion. I have seen Balance of Justice used in this matchup as well in order to interact with Cindra's turns, where she would play cards like Ancestral Empowerment or Throw Dagger, drawing a card and also drawing from the Mask of Momentum. However, the starting gold can be a huge boon to Gravy's gameplay, just giving him agency to get allies into the graveyard on turn 0 without needing discard effect like Golden Tipple, Portside Exchange, or tutor effect like Call into the Grave. Gravy opening the game with Tip the Barkeep, making a Gold Kiss Rum, and also turning on the ability to play Watery Grave cards from Graveyard, however there are none currently. So Gravy is just going to end the turn with that Tip the Barkeep, arsenal a card, and go to a 5-card hand. We can see at least 2 Swells and a Rigor Mortis in hand. That is a strong start for Gravy, able to put that Rigor into the graveyard with either the gold using Gravy's effect, or I believe I see a Golden Tipple as well. Maybe a Portside Exchange or a Tipple drawn from the gold, having used the compass to see the top of the deck, would be enough to get that Rigor Mortis into the graveyard and then play it on that same turn. For Cindra's part, we do have a false start with a Kunai of Retribution, then asking for a little takesy-backsy by instead playing Fire Tenant Strike First. Looking at Cindra's hand, we see an Oath of Loyalty, Cut Through, and a Blood Runs Deep. Oath of Loyalty here, very bad, as the other 3 cards in Cindra's hand are not draconic. We have Cindra instead attacking with Kunai of Retribution, pitching Blood Runs Deep to pay for it, and the follow-up Cut Through is going to deal, threaten anyway, 4 points of damage. With the Kunai having hit, Cindra choosing to flick the Kunai of Retribution in order to deal an extra point of damage. This will not threaten Mask of Momentum, as the Fire Tenant was blocked by a Saltwater Swell. Cindra here just arsenaling the Oath of Loyalty instead and drawing 4 new cards, looking for something better with which to play that Oath of Loyalty. I believe we see an Ignite, a Hot on Their Heels, a Ravenous Rabble, and an Exposed, which is very interesting tech. Being a blue attack reaction that can mark the opposing hero, great for Cindra to generate fealty, gives +1, but notably does not block and cannot be played if the hero is marked. If you are marked, rather, you can play it if the enemy hero is marked. We have a Gravy Bones activation using the gold, drawing a card, discarding that Rigor Mortis from hand. Gravy going to play Golden Tipple, pitching a Saltwater Swell, and discarding, I believe, a Sawbones or an Anka from hand to replace the gold that was used on the Gravy Bones activation and to draw a new card from the top of the deck. This is also 2 with Go Again. Gold Baited Hook can be used this turn with no threat. Gravy has made a gold, so the hook will not destroy itself even if the attack is blocked. However, Cindra does have a number of 2 blocks in the deck, can easily cover up 2. Despite Cindra being a hero that does not often want to block, destroying the Gold Baited Hook with a single card on turn 2 is very tempting. So I suspect that what Gravy is going to do instead is simply going to play out an ally with 2 floating resources and a Dead Threads. It could be Rigor Mortis or the Sawbones. However, Rigor is a lower priority target. So instead, Gravy is going to play out the Rigor Mortis, is going to line it up with a Loot the Hold and the Gold Baited Hook. So Cindra will either take 6, give Gravy another gold, and discard a card to the Loot the Hold effect, which will give Gravy another gold for a total of 3, or Cindra will give at least 2 cards, potentially 3, if blocking with a 2 block, and Dragon Scale the Flight Path in order to block the 6, the discard effect, and the double gold. Either way, Gravy wins, and this is an excellent start to the game for Gravy Bones. Gravy absolutely wants to be both pushing damage with cards like Rigor Mortis or Go Again attacks like Golden Tipple, and threatening on-hit disruption like Loot the Hold and Conqueror of the High Seas. So this is a very strong start from Gravy. Cindra says, send me the bill. I will discard to the Loot the Hold effect. I will give you 2 gold from your Gold Baited Hook and Loot the Hold. It appears that Gravy, unless I am mistaken, and Gravy only did not have any gold. I believe Gravy should have 3 here. We'll see if this gets caught later in the game, or if it's potentially a misplay that ends up costing Gravy at some point, but Gravy should have 3 gold. We have Ignite attacking for 2, Go Again, very likely targeting Gravy Bones. The Ignite discount effect allows for a free Kunai of Retribution, which is excellent at clearing Rigor Mortis, as we see here. Because Mask of Momentum only cares about hits, not where those hits go, this does bring the momentum chain up to 2. Hot on Their Heels is threatening a Mask of Momentum draw at this point. This also gives Cindra the ability to flick the Kunai of Retribution that is on the combat chain, then buy back 2 Kunai at the end of the turn. We have this Exposed being play to give the Hot on Their Heels +1 power, bringing it over the top of Tip the Barkeep, and also marking Gravy, which will give Cindra that fealty. Instead, to dodge both the draw and the fealty, Gravy taps Dead Threads, having used the Gravy effect to put an ally into the graveyard to generate a free resource to use Quick Dodge Flexors to block 2. This is a very interesting turn cycle for both players, as on Gravy's side of the board, he was able to effectively block for 2 with the boots at no cost, given that what he wanted to do anyway was put a chum into the graveyard, and also did not need to block from hand to cover that breakpoint. However, on Cindra's side of the board, when Cindra is sitting at a comfortable 32 points and Quick Dodge Flexors has been used for a single 2 points of value, that feels pretty good too. The Flick Knives was used to push an extra point of damage, generate a fealty by hitting a marked target, and allowed Cindra to buy back both kunai. A card is in Arsenal, that Oath of Loyalty that we saw on turn 0, and now Cindra is set up to have a very good next turn. On Gravy's side of the board, we see Chart the High Seas being pitched to play yellow Golden Tipple, discarding Anka, using the gold baited hook. This does threaten on hit gold. Cindra choosing not to block 2 on the Golden Tipple makes a lot of sense. We have Gravy with a card in Arsenal, 3 allies in graveyard, Chum, Anka, and Sawbones. All 3 are very good against Cindra in their own unique way. Chart the High Seas being played from graveyard, from Arsenal, discarding 2 reds. Oh no, you can see both players having a laugh about the low impact of that Chart the High Seas. Not only chart generating 0 resources, 0 gold, and 0 ally, but also taking 2 reds away from Gravy that would have allowed him to push damage and attempt to race Cindra. And we have our Gravy player just shaking their head at how unfortunate it is that that chart was so bad. But, of course, Gravy has put a blue into the graveyard this turn, able to pitch a Rigor Mortis from hand to play out Chum and attack with it for 4 for 0 resources. Cindra down to 26, going to need to decide how best to deal with this Chum. Now, it's possible that Gravy just doesn't draw a card with Watery Grave, cannot activate Chum this turn, and Cindra has the luxury of ignoring Chum in order of threatening damage onto Gravy's face. However, that might not even be the right decision, as if Gravy draws Loot the Hold, that he is able to threaten the Loot the Hold effect with 1 card on a 4 power breakpoint. So far, we don't have a Gravy activation being used, but it wasn't needed, as Cindra instead throws 2 Ronin Renegades at the Chum in order to clear it, but also draws a card thanks to Mask of Momentum. Then on Chainlink 4, playing the discounted Wrath of Retribution, 3 go again. Both kunais now attack for free and for +1 power. This is going to be a very big turn for Cindra. Also still sitting on 2 cards in hand. Gravy is about to take a ton of damage, and having already used the Quick Dodge Flexors, this is absolutely a danger close situation. At this point, Cindra does have the option to Flick Knives, deal an extra point of damage, put a kunai into the graveyard, then use Cindra's effect to buy back a kunai in order to threaten 2 more points of damage. Could potentially also use Dragonscaler Flight Path to give that kunai an extra attack and deal 2 more points of damage. Scalar Flight Path has not blocked yet, so that would be a loss in value. We do see Blood Splattered Vest being used to generate a resource that will pay for Demonstrate Devotion, making another fealty for Cindra, and dealing 4 points of damage. We have a Ronin Renegade in hand, which only threatens 3. There's no on-hit here. Cindra could choose to Arsenal it in order to set up a 5-card hand next turn to threaten more Mask of Momentum triggers. There's always a danger of that, in that Gravy with Conqueror of the High Seas can both destroy the Ronin Renegade in Arsenal and make a gold. Cindra choosing to play out the Ronin Renegade, but chooses not to attack with the Kunai of Retribution, giving herself an out if she needs a Draconic starter on the next turn. However, we see an Oath of Loyalty, an Ignite in hand, as well as a Display Loyalty. Cindra not hurting for starters on this next turn. Gravy plays Call to the Grave. This is a blue that allows Gravy to search his deck for any card and put it into the graveyard. In this case, Gravy chooses Chum. Call to the Grave being blue, goes to the graveyard, allows Gravy to play cards with Watery Grave from the graveyard. Because an ally has hit the graveyard this turn, Dead Threads can be tapped to make a resource. If Gravy has a blue in hand, then he will be able to use the Dead Threads in order to play Chum for basically one card. That is a 2-card 10, folks. Very good. We have Saltwater Swell blue being pitched to play Saltwater Swell red, revealing a yellow on the top of the deck. Absolutely the worst case scenario for Gravy, not having the extra pitch in order to play out something like Chum and Sawbones. The double ally turn potentially buying the space that Gravy needs to stay alive in this game. So far, the top of Gravy's deck has not been helpful at all this game. We have a Chart the High Seas being played that is going to put a blue into Gravy's pitch zone and a yellow into Gravy's graveyard. Also, because Sea Legs hit the graveyard, that creates a second Gold Kiss Rum token. What can Gravy do with 5 resources? With 4 gold, it would allow Gravy to draw quite a few cards. Then Dead Threads is able to make another resource, which allows Gravy to potentially play something like a Sawbones. Depending on what Gravy draws, he could send more attacks, double ally. How Gravy uses these 5 resources is really going to shape the rest of the game. We know that Cindra is capable of producing quite a lot of damage, and depending on how that damage is dealt, could both clear allies and draw extra cards with Mask Momentum. Being at 23 health, Cindra is not in any danger of dying, able to just weather whatever Gravy is going to throw at her. We see a blue golden tipple drawn from that gold. Gravy goes to pitch it, realizes that he has 3 resources remaining, does not actually need to pitch a card in order to play something like a Sawbones. We'll see, is Gravy going to use the floating resource, attack with Sawbones? Or is Gravy going to arsenal that golden tipple? We have a Gold Kiss Rum being used to attack with Sawbones for 6 go again. Now Gravy pitching that golden tipple in order to play out a Chum. Chum cannot attack, but Chum is going to be able to discard a card with Watery Grave and force Cindra to attack it. If Cindra sends damage at face, allowing the Chum activation, and Sawbones is able to protect the Chum with its damage prevention effect, that is potentially very annoying for Cindra to deal with. We know that Cindra does have the damage to kill both of these allies, but the sequencing is going to be very important here. Oath of Loyalty being sent at Chum could prompt Gravy to discard an effect with Watery Grave and force more damage onto Chum. The problem is this Ignite is going to be very difficult to sequence well. So let's say Oath of Loyalty gets sent at Chum. Chum has 2 health remaining. Ignite gets sent at Chum. Sawbones can prevent one of that damage and force another attack to be sent at Chum in order to kill it. Alternatively, if Oath of Loyalty gets sent face and Chum is activated, then Gravy needs to put 6 damage into the Chum, but actually needs to put 7 damage into the Chum because of Sawbones, and that is effectively taking the rest of Cindra's turn and giving Gravy space. Gravy gets to untap with a Sawbones that can both threaten 6 damage and has that floating point of prevention. This is going to be a very tricky spot for Cindra to navigate. Cindra does have the Ancestral Empowerment as sort of a gotcha move. Oath of Loyalty is sent at Chum. Ignite is sent at Chum. Gravy makes the surprising call not to activate Sawbones, and maybe here we're doing a little bit of thinking, maybe a takeback is going to be allowed, because if Gravy doesn't activate Sawbones, then Chum just dies. If Gravy does activate Sawbones, then the Ancestral Empowerment is enough to kill Chum. However, a kunai would also be enough to kill Chum, but this is what I'm saying. The sequencing here becomes problematic because Sawbones can protect Chum. Sawbones could also protect itself. So we have Sawbones being used to protect Chum, that is forcing Cindra to use the Kunai of Retribution in order to kill Chum. Display Loyalty is now used to kill Sawbones. An extra card is drawn from the top of the deck, and we see that it is Blood Runs Deep. That is an excellent card for Cindra to draw here. It is going to allow her to throw this Kunai of Retribution at Gravy, deal 1 point of damage. Blood Runs Deep, threatening 2 points of damage, but most importantly, it allows Cindra to play Ancestral Empowerment. Because Empowerment was not played on Ignite or Display Loyalty, if Cindra draws another Ancestral Empowerment, another Oath of Loyalty, then she does just take an Intellect penalty, as she is not able to play both of the cards in her hand before moving to the end of turn. And the Ancestral Empowerment finds a Blaze Headlong, throwing 4 more damage at Gravy. Because Cindra bought back both Kunai of Retribution, she's able to flick 1. This would effectively put Gravy down to 2 health if no blocks are declared, and that is not a spot that Gravy wants to be in. A 16-point life deficit and being 2 points away from death against an opponent with Flick Knives. Gravies, to the best of my knowledge, are really not running damage prevention outside of Sawbones. They aren't running Shelter from the Storm. They are not playing Throw Caution to the Wind against Cindra. Gravy does not have an easy way to interact with unblockable damage, and Cindra can produce a lot of it. We have a Saltwater Swell put in front of the Blaze Headlong. Between the 1 point of damage that leaked over the top of that block, plus the flicked Kunai, Gravy is sitting uncomfortably at 5 against Cindra, who is sitting at 18. We have Cindra with 1 fealty that is going to be enough to give this Art of the Dragon Blood go again and discount the next 3 Draconic cards played. We see a Throw Dagger in Cindra's hand that can not only pay for Kunai attacks, but could also throw a Kunai in order to both draw a card and keep a Mask Momentum Chain alive. This is in the face of Murderous Rabble attacking for 3 with Go Again, showing a Call to the Grave on top of the deck. It is unlikely that Cindra gives a card from hand in order to block this, but with Gravy at 5, it is also unlikely that Cindra ever triggers Mask of Momentum again this game. I'm not saying that Cindra should block this Murderous Rabble for 3 with Mask Momentum, but I am saying that Cindra could block it, and that is very likely something at the top of Cindra's mind. When do I cash in this Mask of Momentum? Probably isn't here, but it could be on something like a Loot the Hold attack. It could be on something like a gold-baited hooked Golden Tipple. Cindra has some options here being at such a high life total. However, because one of those options is no blocks, Cindra takes 3 and goes to 15. Gravy has 2 cards in hand. Call to the Grave on top of the deck needs to determine how to best navigate this situation. With 1 Chum left in the deck, Gravy could pitch a blue to a gold, draw this Call to the Grave, play Call to the Grave, put a Chum into the graveyard, and then pitch a blue in order to play the Chum, possibly tap Gold-Baited Hook, and attack with Chum for 4 with the hook effect, or not hook and just attack with Chum for 4. Chum might be enough to keep Gravy alive for another turn, but as we just saw, Cindra is also happy to use Chum as a Mask of Momentum pinata. We have a back alley break line being pitched in order to draw that Call to the Grave from the top of the deck. We have the Call to the Grave then being pitched with that floating resource in order to break another gold. Gravy with 2 resources floating, 2 cards in hand. This Murderous Rabble has technically gone to the graveyard, as pitching to activate gold did break the combat chain, so Gravy is able to play out allies from the graveyard. I believe that the glare makes it impossible to see what this card is. I believe that is an Anka. Gravy here pitching Sawbones in order to break that last gold, to draw a card based on the reaction from Gravy. I'm assuming it really was not what we're looking for. Though I don't believe Gravy needed to pitch the Sawbones. I want to say that because Gravy had 2 floating, he could have just broken the gold and kept a 3-card hand. That doesn't necessarily help Gravy here, as playing Sawbones from hand does not give Go Again the way that playing Watery Grave cards from Graveyard does based on the Compass. But instead we have Gravy pitching Sawbones to play Anka from the graveyard, and pitching Command and Conquer to attack for 5. Another benefit for Cindra not having arsenaled anything on the last turn. Generally, Cindras do try to avoid arsenaling cards against Gravy because of the power of cards like Conquer the High Seas, Command and Conquer, and even blue cards like Loot the Arsenal. We have a Ravenous Rabble attacking for 4 with Go Again, Cindra sitting on Throw Dagger, Art of Dragon Blood, and Blaze Headlong, able to present 12 damage off of 3 cards, use Flick Knives in order to keep a hit chain alive, and also able to use Throw Dagger to keep a hit chain alive. Gravy putting 3 block in front of this 4 power, going down to 4, Mask of Momentum currently active, Blaze Headlong is going to attack for 4. Gravy does have this gold-baited hook. It hasn't blocked yet, so a 3 block from hand plus a gold-baited hook would be enough to break the chain and get a card dagger out from Cindra in order to keep this Mask of Momentum chain alive, put Gravy down to 3. Fealty being used to play Art of the Dragon Blood for 4 Go Again, and Gravy shows 2 allies, 2 non-blocks, unable to actually prevent lethal damage. Notably, Cindra only had 2 Draconic Links on the chain, so she would not have been able to, say this Art of Dragon Blood gets blocked, activate Cindra, buy back both daggers, and then throw one in order to both keep the Mask of Momentum chain alive and draw a card, but ultimately not something she needed to do. She is able to put this game away through the sheer power of 0 for 3 and 0 for 4 Go Again, efficiently and effectively clearing allies, and despite a strong disruptive start from Gravy, was not able to keep it going. I hope you enjoyed this commentary. Please let me know in the comments whether you liked it, didn't like it, feedback, criticism, what I did well, what you think I can do better, keeping in mind that this is a solo operation. If I was in a booth, you would not have to hear my voice the entire time. I would have a co-caster switching on and off with me, but I do want to know what you think I could be doing better. I will have more commentary, more gameplay coming up for you on Daily Fab Gameplay. Until the next time I see you, take care.